Welcome, everyone, to today's deep dive. It is Thursday, March 19th, 2026, and I'm so glad you're joining us for this one. Because today we are looking at something, well, it's massive, literally.
Oh, yeah. Massive is definitely the word for it.
Right. We're talking about a newly published ebook, and it clocks in at 4,120 pages.
Which is just a staggering amount of material.
It really is. It's called Rooted and Built Up in Christ, transforming faith into action to grow, serve, and multiply in Christ. And it's written by Chris R. Velasquez, who is a missionary pastor with like over 25 years of experience working in the Philippines.
And 25 years on the ground gives you a very specific, very grounded perspective, right?
Exactly. And the mission for our deep dive today is to basically explore this framework he's laid out. A framework that, honestly, it challenges basically everything our modern culture tells us about how to measure success.
Yeah, it completely flips the script on what success actually looks like.
It does. And it really digs into how you move from just, acquiring information in your head to actually transforming your life and the lives of the people around you.
Which is something I think everyone listening can probably relate to wanting.
Definitely. And to start us off, I actually want to talk about the cover of the book because the visual setup is so striking.
Oh, the redwood trees.
Yes. The cover has this picture of a towering forest of giant redwood trees. The sunlight is just streaming down through the canopy. And if you look really closely, down at the base of these colossal ancient trunks,
There's that tiny little hiker.
yeah, a tiny hiker standing right there at the bottom, which just gives you this incredible sense of scale. Now, the book points out that these massive redwoods, they regularly survive these hugely destructive storms,
Right.
but they don't survive because of all that impressive towering wood you see up above the ground. They survive because of this hidden, massive network of roots that are all locked together beneath the surface.
Right, the stuff you can't even see.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this, because I think it's the perfect analogy. Modern learning and just modern culture in general, it feels like we're out here planting a million fast-growing shallow weeds.
Yeah, just trying to get quick results.
Right. But this text, these 4,000 pages, it's arguing that we need to be growing redwoods, taking the time to build that unseen foundation.
And that requires a profound shift in perspective, honestly, because we constantly mistake a shallow root system for a deep one.
We really do.
Like, the core problem the book identifies right away is that in today's world, we equate a shallow root system with simply accumulating knowledge.
Like having all the facts.
Right. We live in an era where we think maturity, and the book specifically explores this through a lens of Christian maturity, we think it's primarily about learning more. You attend the studies, you listen to the lectures, you gather all the data.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating here is how the author draws a really sharp line between being an informed person and being a formed person.
Wow, informed versus formed. That distinction really stood out to me when I was going through the text.
It's a huge difference.
Yeah, and the author actually uses a reference from the book of Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, specifically, to argue that salvation, or the moment of conversion, that isn't the finish line.
No, not at all.
It's barely the starting block. The argument is that, yes, grace saves a person, but grace also actively forms a person. Like, the divine intent isn't just a quick rescue mission from sin, it's this lifelong shaping process into a reflection of Christ.
And that shaping process, that is exactly where the friction happens. Because it is incredibly common for people today to experience, a moment of belief without ever actually experiencing formation. They have all the right data loaded up in their heads. They know the theology inside and out. They know all the history.
They can quote the verses.
Exactly. But their actual character, their daily habits, their knee-jerk reactions to stress or conflict, that remains largely untouched. They're heavily informed, but entirely unformed.
Okay, but I do have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Because just as someone who loves having access to information, isn't having all of this stuff at our fingertips a massive advantage today?
I mean, you would think so, right?
Yeah. We have unprecedented access. I can pull up online sermons from anywhere in the world on my phone. We have massive digital theological libraries, podcasts, endless deep dives. So how could knowing more or having better access to truth possibly be viewed as an obstacle?
Well, the text argues that the abundance of information isn't inherently evil, right? It's not bad to have access, but it has conditioned us to adopt the wrong metrics for success.
How so?
Think about it. Information is easily measurable. We can track how many downloads a podcast sermon gets.
Right, the analytics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or how many unique viewers log into an online seminar. And because those numbers are so incredibly easy to track, We naturally start evaluating spiritual success using the exact same metrics that modern society uses to evaluate corporate business success.
Ah, okay. So we start looking for measurable outcomes.
Yes. Profits, grades, attendance.
Right? Organizational expansion, online visibility.
Precisely. And when a church or any spiritual community adopts those modern metrics, it just naturally starts measuring its own health by larger congregations.
Bigger buildings.
Bigger buildings, highly complex programs. The visible stuff is prioritized over the invisible stuff. But this framework points out that this directly contradicts the teachings of Jesus.
Oh, right. Specifically the parables of the kingdom.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the hidden seed growing underground, or the tiny mustard seed.
Right. Those parables emphasize that true fruitfulness is not measured by how many thousands of people hear a message in a single afternoon.
Which is the modern metric.
Totally. Instead, it's measured by how deeply that message takes root in just a few people. And the mechanism of that growth. It's often completely hidden, it's small, and it is remarkably slow.
You know, that makes me think of a tech startup.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, imagine a startup that becomes completely obsessed with vanity metrics.
Like user acquisition stuff.
Exactly. The founders are sitting in a boardroom, and they're staring at a dashboard, just celebrating daily page views, app downloads, social media followers.
The numbers look great.
The numbers are going up. The charts look fantastic. But they are completely ignoring the core mechanism of their actual business. Like, does this product bring any real value to the users?
Right. Are people's lives actually fundamentally better?
Exactly. The visibility is sky high, but the actual transformation happening for the user is zero.
That tech startup analogy actually aligns perfectly with the historical context the book provides.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you look at the early Christian movement in the 1st century, they had zero vanity metrics.
I mean, they didn't have Instagram?
Right. They had no centralized programs, they lacked cultural dominance, they certainly didn't have large, impressive buildings with, like, digital attendance trackers at the door.
Yeah, they were a marginalized group.
But despite all that, they expanded rapidly and completely transformed the entire Roman Empire.
So how did they actually do it? Because it obviously wasn't through a massive marketing campaign.
No, it was through household gatherings, shared meals, and deep relational mentorship. And to understand why that works so well, you really have to look at the social mechanics of the Roman Empire at the time.
Okay, what were those like?
Well, Roman society was rigidly stratified. You had patricians, plebeians, freedmen, and slaves.
You're right, very strict classes.
And these groups did not mix at all. But in these early Christian household gatherings, you'd have a wealthy merchant and an enslaved person sitting at the exact same table.
Wow.
Sharing a meal as equals and calling each other brother and sister.
Which in that culture would have been completely scandalous.
It was radically disruptive. It entirely broke the established social hierarchies, and that deep, lived-out reality of equality and love, it was incredibly appealing to the masses.
Because it was real.
Yes. The growth was organic and relational. It was driven by actual transformation rather than institutional expansion. It wasn't about getting 1,000 people into a stadium. It was about the profound, completely unmeasurable depth of connection that was happening just sitting around a dinner table.
Okay, so if true success is about that kind of hidden depth, rather than visible vanity metrics, what are the actual mechanics of building it?
Like, practically speaking.
Yeah, because it sounds great historically, but how do we structurally achieve that depth today?
Well, the framework uses a dual metaphor from the Apostle Paul, from Book of Colossians, chapter 2.
Okay.
Paul tells believers to be rooted and built up in Christ. And it's a brilliant juxtaposition by the author, because rooted is botanical, it's organic, it focuses on drawing nourishment and anchoring yourself for stability beneath the surface.
That's like the redwood tree.
Exactly like the redwood. You can't force a root to grow faster, it just takes time and the right environment.
But the other part, built up, that's an architectural metaphor.
Exactly. Built up implies intentional construction. You are out there laying bricks, layer by layer, day by day.
It takes work.
It requires deliberate effort. The text emphasizes that this growth is a partnership. It's both divine and human. The author actually quotes the Apostle Peter saying, "Make every effort."
Meaning you can't just sit around.
Right. Believers can't just passively wait to be magically transformed. They have to actively cooperate with the divine through daily intentional habits.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because the text gets very specific about what those habits or spiritual disciplines actually are.
Yeah, it breaks them down beautifully.
It outlines 5 key areas. And it doesn't just list them. It explains the psychological and spiritual mechanics of why they work. Let's look at the first one.
Yeah.
Scripture meditation.
Right.
The crucial distinction here is between reading just to inform the mind and meditating to actually shape the heart. It's not about blazing through a reading plan just to check a box on your app.
Like cramming for a test.
Exactly. It's about rumination.
Yeah.
Taking a single truth and just chewing on it until it moves from an intellectual concept to an actual emotional reality.
And the second discipline is prayer. And the mechanism here is so vital to understand. The author defines prayer as relational communion with God, not a transactional exchange.
It's not a wish list.
Right. It is not a cosmic vending machine where you input a request and wait for the product to drop out the bottom.
Yeah.
The psychological function of this kind of prayer is recalibration. It isn't about convincing the divine to align with your will. It's about spending enough time in communion that your own desires begin to recalibrate and align with the divine.
That is such a good way to put it. And then there is worship, which the book describes as reorienting your affections.
Reorienting, yeah.
Because in our modern attention economy, we effectively worship whatever we pay the most attention to, right?
That is so true.
So by intentionally setting aside time for worship, you're actively rewiring your baseline desires away from worldly priorities like status, wealth, approval, and back toward ultimate truth.
Which brings us to the fourth discipline, service. And this is where the internal work finally becomes external.
Right, hitting the pavement.
Yeah, because the default human state is self-obsession. We are constantly, automatically calculating how situations benefit us.
Guilty.
We all are. But service physically forces the brain to consider the needs of someone else. When you are serving, you are literally breaking the grip of selfishness and rewiring your neural pathways for humility.
It's a physical action that produces an internal shift.
Exactly.
And the final one is community, because you absolutely cannot do this alone in a vacuum. But, and this is the key, community here isn't just about hanging out with people who agree with you.
Oh, no. Definitely not an echo chamber.
Right. It's about accountability, encouragement, and specifically correction. Real community involves friction.
Yeah, the hard stuff.
Dealing with difficult people, having your blind spots pointed out, and actually learning to forgive. That friction is what actually sands off our rough edges.
So those 5 habits, meditations, prayer, worship, service, and community, they are the daily brick and mortar of being built up. But the overarching warning the author gives here is that expecting rapid maturity from these disciplines is a massive trap.
It takes so much time.
It does. Even the original disciples, who physically walked alongside Jesus, they were constantly struggling with pride and fear and doubt.
That part really resonated with me. Reading about how gradual the process is, it feels a lot like being accepted into a highly prestigious university.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, getting that acceptance letter in the mail, that is an amazing life-changing moment. You celebrate it, right?
Of course.
But holding that letter doesn't mean you automatically have the degree. You still have to show up to the lectures, you have to do the agonizing late-night reading, take the exams, and put in the daily, unglamorous work for years.
Yeah.
Salvation is the acceptance letter. Discipleship is doing the daily work.
That is a perfect way to frame it. But,
Yeah.
this does lead us to a very practical tension. Practicing these slow, methodical, gradual habits sounds wonderful in theory, but we have to do it right now in the year 2026.
Right, in reality.
How does a slow, rooted approach survive the high-speed, notification-driven reality of the modern digital age? Because the environment we are trying to grow these roots in is openly hostile to slow growth.
Yeah, the text definitely tackles that head on. It identifies 3 specific dynamics of our modern era that actively fight against this kind of depth. First is information overload.
Which we touched on earlier.
Yeah. We are bombarded with so much data every single second that human attention has literally become our most scarce resource. If you are constantly distracted, you cannot meditate and you cannot pray deeply.
You just don't have the bandwidth.
Exactly.
Second is cultural fragmentation. Historically, a person's beliefs were shaped by deep reflection, local community, and tradition.
Right.
But today, beliefs are being shaped by highly sophisticated social media algorithms. And those algorithms are designed to push whatever content gets the most extreme emotional reaction.
Anger, usually.
Right. So we are being spiritually formed by code that's designed to maximize engagement, not maturity.
That's terrifying when you really think about it.
Yeah.
And the third dynamic the book points out is a crisis of authenticity.
Yeah.
Because everyone has the tools to curate a perfect digital persona online. We have all become deeply skeptical of everything we see. We just assume the image is manipulated. We assume the motives are selfish.
So what's the fix? Well, the antidote the book offers to all of this digital noise is a concept called embodied faith.
Embodied faith.
Yes. It points to the profound theological statement in the Gospel of John, chapter 1. The Word became flesh.
Ah, okay.
The mechanism for cutting through modern sexism isn't a better argument. It's not a slicker viral video. People today are starving for authentic community and real truth, and you simply cannot communicate that through a screen.
No, you can't.
It is best communicated through a living, breathing person. You can curate a photo online, but you cannot fake patience when you are stuck in real-life traffic. You can't fake compassion when you're sitting with someone in a hospital waiting room. Integrity has to be embodied.
Well, wait, if you're listening to this on a smartphone right now, constantly connected to global networks, you have to wonder, is the author suggesting we just abandon all this technology?
You toss the phones in the river.
Yeah, because digital platforms allow a single person to reach a global audience instantly. Throwing that away seems like a massive waste of potential for any movement. Why wouldn't we want to scale this up?
It's a completely fair question, and the text's stance is actually quite nuanced. Technology is not the enemy here. It is merely a tool.
Okay.
But the guiding question the book asks, and this is just a brilliant filter for any tool we choose to use, is this. Does this tool actually deepen discipleship, or does it merely increase activity?
Oh, wow. That is a vital distinction. Activity versus actual discipleship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because in the digital age, speed so easily replaces reflection, and vanity metrics like views and shares, they easily replace meaningful transformation.
Right.
The book isn't saying you need to delete all your accounts and move to a cabin in the woods.
Good, because I need my GPS.
Right. It is just warning us not to confuse our online reach with actual rooted impact. You might have 10,000 followers, but if you aren't deeply invested in the spiritual formation of the people sitting in your own living room, the roots are shallow.
So, if we are supposed to use technology wisely and really focus on this slow, deep, embodied way of living, what is the end game here?
Where does it all lead?
Yeah, where is all of this supposed to lead? Well, the text reveals that the ultimate goal isn't just your own personal self-improvement. It isn't just about you becoming a slightly better version of yourself.
No, it's bigger than that.
Much bigger. It is about exponential, generational multiplication.
This is where the mathematical model of the book becomes incredibly compelling. The author looks at the Great Commission, the mandate Jesus gave to his followers to go and make disciples.
Right.
He stresses that the command is to make disciples, not merely converts.
And a convert is just someone who changes their mind.
Exactly. But a disciple is someone who replicates a way of life. And the way you replicate a way of life is through a very specific mathematical model of relational mentorship.
The text points to the Apostle Paul for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Paul mentored a young leader named Timothy. And Paul tells Timothy to take everything he has learned and entrust it to reliable people who will then be qualified to teach others.
Yeah, from 2 Timothy chapter 2.
Right.
Think about the generational chain in that single sentence. Paul invests in Timothy. That's generation 1 to 2.
Okay.
Timothy invests in reliable people. That's generation 3.
Right.
The reliable people invest in others. That's generation 4. Jesus modeled this exact same math. Yes, he occasionally preached to massive crowds, but he invested the vast majority of his actual day-to-day time deeply into 12 men.
Yeah.
And within that 12, he invested even more deeply into 3.
Which, again, if we're looking at modern vanity metrics, that looks completely absurd.
Totally backward.
It looks wildly inefficient. You have thousands of people clamoring to hear you speak, and you are spending all your time eating meals and walking down dusty roads with 12 guys.
Yeah.
But that inefficient method is exactly how the movement eventually overtook the Roman Empire.
This raises an important question about how we view our own lives, right? It forces us to completely reevaluate our everyday relationships.
Definitely.
Evangelism, or sharing your faith, it isn't supposed to be an occasional high-pressure event where you drop information on a stranger.
Like handing out a flyer.
Exactly. It is supposed to be relational mentorship happening in ordinary spaces. It's walking alongside someone day in and day out, demonstrating that embodied faith we talked about earlier.
It's the exact difference between addition and compounding interest.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, if you want to grow a crowd and you add 10 people every single day, Your growth is linear.
Yeah.
It's predictable. But spiritual multiplication is like compounding interest. If you deeply invest your life into just 2 people over the course of the year and then the next year, you teach them to each deeply invest in 2 more people while you do the same.
It adds up.
The math starts off agonizingly slow. For the first few years, it looks like you are failing compared to the guy who's just gathering a massive crowd.
Right, because his numbers look better on the dashboard.
Exactly. But eventually, that multiplication curve hits a hockey stick trajectory. It compounds, and it becomes a completely unstoppable movement that spans generations.
And that is the crux of Velazquez's entire thesis in these 4,000 pages. You cannot get to that unstoppable movement of multiplication without first doing the slow, hidden work of being rooted.
You have to be formed before you can multiply.
Exactly.
Looking back at the journey we've taken through this massive text today, we started by redefining the moment of belief. It's not a finish line, but the starting block for formation.
Right.
We looked at the critical need to build a deep root system through the daily friction of spiritual disciplines: meditation, prayer, worship, service, and community.
The daily work.
Yeah. Then we navigated the challenge of maintaining an incarnational, embodied faith in a digital world that is just obsessed with algorithmic noise and vanity metrics.
Which is hard, but necessary.
And finally, we explored the quiet, world-changing power of relational multiplication. And why does all of this matter to you listening right now?
That's the big question.
Because regardless of your specific background, whether you are leading a team at work, whether you are raising a family, or whether you're simply trying to navigate your own personal growth in a highly chaotic world, this framework is a powerful reminder.
Absolutely.
Focusing on depth over visibility is truly the only way to build a legacy that lasts across generations. We are constantly pressured by society to plant quick-growing weeds just to show immediate results.
Yeah, quick fixes.
But we really need to be taking the time to plant redwoods.
To tie all of this together, there's a profound observation from the author that really summarizes the stakes of this entire framework.
So,
He notes that history rarely records the quiet moments that change civilizations.
wow.
We live in a society that is completely obsessed with things we can measure, things we can track on a dashboard, and things we can post online for immediate validation.
The vanity metrics.
Exactly. But if this text is right and true, enduring impact is actually hidden, it's slow, and it is completely unmeasurable by today's cultural metrics. It leaves us with a challenging question to consider long after we wrap up here today.
Okay, let's hear it.
What is the most important, entirely unmeasurable thing you are cultivating in your own life right now?